On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, we recently toured around the teams in the Eastern Conference that the Raptors should be contemporaries with this year. But what about a team that's projected to be much better? We're talking Knicks on today's show with Gavin Schall of Locked On Knicks. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, September the 24th. And I am your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can find the show on Instagram. You can join us on the Locked On Raptors Discord server. You can do that for free as well. Link in the description of the podcast, free to join for anyone who wants to come talk ball, be part of our listener community. It's a great old time. And on today's show, also a great time, was my chat with Gavin Schall of Locked On Knicks, a recurring guest here on this podcast. We've gone back and forth many times, specifically since the Raptors trade with the Knicks, OG, for RJ Barrett, Immanuel Quickley a couple years back. Did a little check-in on some of those guys and just an overall check on both of these teams going into the season in a wide-open Eastern Conference. The Knicks, of course, projected to be much better than the Raptors, as they should be. They're really good, and for me, one of the more fun teams to watch in the entire league. And so we talked about that. We talked about Mitchell Robinson and whether he'll start for the Knicks and whether they're too dependent upon Mitchell Robinson to be the best version of themselves. We talked about the Raptors starting five and where things all sort in. Scottie Barnes, Immanuel Quickley, on down the line. Hope you enjoy it. My chat with Gavin Schall of Locked On Knicks. We'll be back again tomorrow, by the way, with Dave Dufour from the Athletic NBA Daily. We'll talk about the Raptors, his thoughts on the offseason, the team ahead, and he's got a lot of firsthand experience coaching with the Georgian national team and one Mamu. So we'll talk about Mamu with Dave Dufour, a guy who's coached him up close and personal as well on tomorrow's show. So you have that to look forward to. In the meantime, though, it's myself, Gavin Schall of Locked On Knicks, talking ball. Let's do it.
All right, guys, as promised, we are crossing it over with Sean Woodley, the fantastic host of the Locked On Raptors podcast. For our Canadian audience, I am Gavin Schall, the host of Locked On Knicks. Sean, we've done a bunch of these over the years. We were just talking about your summer. You just had a new kid. Congratulations on air. It's only official if I say it on air. How's everything going, buddy? And I'm excited to talk Knicks Raptors with you, as always.
It's great, brother, and I'm excited to talk Knicks Raptors in a situation where the Raptors are not like trying to suck. It's been a long couple of years where they've just been very outwardly not trying to win basketball games, and I'm thrilled to be back in a world where they're trying to win basketball games. What a novel concept in a professional sports league. So yeah, you can quibble with what their upside is or their ceiling. I'm just here to watch some fun mid-40s basketball in terms of wins. That would be a thrill for me. And I'm sure like Knicks fans can relate, considering how fun that season was back in, 2021, where they were good for the first time in ages. And there's a lot of charm and a lot to be said for watching like a pretty good basketball team that probably is not going to win the whole thing.
I guess to that point, like, how much fun do you think this team is going to be? Because I look at the presumed starting five, right? And tell me if I'm off on this, but the five biggest names: Immanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Scottie Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Jakob Poeltl. I would assume that's who Toronto's going to start. Maybe like if I were running the team, maybe you bring RJ off the bench. You get a little bit more shooting with like a Grady Dick in there. I'm sure that's something you have discussed a ton this summer, but assuming that is going to be Toronto's starting five, do those five guys make sense together? Obviously, your audience knows this, but for the Knicks fans listening, Brandon Ingram, I believe, did not play a single minute for Toronto after being traded from
not a second. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Not a second. He did not play a second of basketball after the trade.
There you go. And all five of those guys played 65 or less games last year. So we did not really get a large sample size, which is a bummer because I wanted, particularly Immanuel Quickley. I just want him to play a full healthy season. I want to see what that looks like, but we really have no clue what this is going to look like. Do you think it makes sense?
Look, I don't think the starters are necessarily going to be like a juggernaut of a lineup. I think they're going to be fine. I don't think they're going to be like terrible where they're getting run off the floor. I think there's just too much talent across the board too much in terms of just like offensive creation between the bunch. Maybe there's not one singular guy you're happy running the whole thing through, but they run a pretty egalitarian system anyway, and you add in Brandon Ingram's shot making and his own ability to just kind of take it and score. I think they're going to be a pretty good offensive team with that group, even with some suspect spacing. It's going to require RJ Barrett to, eagerly take threes and hopefully make them. He's been hit and miss since coming over in the trade a couple of years ago. But, at the back part of that 23-24 season, he shot like 39% on 6 threes a game. Like, you'll take that all day long. And to his credit, last year, he also averaged about 6 threes a game. Didn't shoot quite as well, but he's eager to take them, and he's going to have to be eager to take them because there are probably going to be a lot of wide open threes for RJ Barrett within this offense. I think for me, the fun for this team is going to be in how they stagger their lineups and how they navigate 48 minutes. To your point, like, I don't think RJ Barrett's going to come off the bench to start. I think that could be a thing they check in on at some point throughout the season if things aren't going well. But I do think he's going to be probably the first sub out. I think they're going to try to run him with the second unit with some shooting around him as best they can. And I think they're going to have a lot of fun sort of in between lineups where they have all these kind of weird gadgety players. You have Grady Dick, who's like fully tilted to the offensive end of the floor. You have Colin Murray-Boyles, their rookie, who's very defense coded. You've got Jacoby Walter, who's kind of a balance of two. Jamal Shed is just this like energy, up in your face defender at the point of attack. I think they're going to be able to sprinkle in a lot of fun sort of 2 and 3 starter lineups with their bench guys. And that's going to be where the real joy of this team is found. The starters we'll see, I'm not fully convinced they're going to close every game that matters. I think we'll probably see some, mixing and matching. Maybe Ochai Agbaji closes games over Barrett or Grady Dick, as you mentioned. Maybe they go small and close with Colin Murray-Boyles in place of Jakob Poeltl sometimes. I think they're going to want to see a lot of what their rookie can do. It's going to be a team that is, I think they're trying to be more than the sum of their parts, and I think they're going to try to do that with 11 or 12 guys so they can kind of mix and match to find workable lineups that make sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Can you talk to me and even pitch me a little bit on Scottie Barnes? Because I would guess I had him like lower in my Locked On Top 100 than maybe any other host and most of the hosts. But I'm open to the idea that comes from a place of ignorance. I probably have not watched enough of the Raptors over the last couple of years. I am just normally adverse to like a guy who is your lead ball handler who, at least at this point, and I guess he's shown flashes, but cannot shoot from distance unless they are like a Giannis tier, like scorer and athlete and just dominant force. But I know Scottie brings a ton else to the table. Where are we at with his development and what are sort of his goals this year? To your point, like operating in a lineup that is certainly the most, well, I don't want to say the most talented because obviously had OG, had Siakam early in his career, but maybe like 1 through 5, like the most talented he's ever played with. But not necessarily like built around him in that like ideally everyone else would be like a B to A+ shooter around him.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, classic American media underrating a Toronto Raptor. Unbelievable. What'd you have him 70th year to top 100? Absurd. Get out of here. No. Look, I understand the skepticism with Scottie Barnes. I think there's a fair amount of it within the fan base, regarding Scottie Barnes as well. I think last season you need to take with like so many grains of salt, specifically on the offensive end of the floor, where Immanuel Quickley, who was supposed to be the lead guard for this team, someone who in concert with Scottie Barnes was going to help run the offense, he missed the first half of the season and played 33 total games, half of which came in a stretch of the season where the team was actively not trying to win basketball games. I think a full season of Immanuel Quickley alone would have made Scottie Barnes look a little less sort of overburdened, I think, on the offensive end than he did last year. There were so many possessions, Gavin, last season where Scottie Barnes would walk the ball up the floor. There'd be no space. There'd be no movement. He'd just have the ball at the top of the arc and just try to create something from nothing. And that's not his game. That's not a thing he's particularly good at. He can't really turn the corner. And if there's, if people aren't staying home on shooters, the driving lanes just aren't there. And I think that is really where you saw Scottie Barnes struggle and the reason why his efficiency tanked last season. I think this year, playing with Brandon Ingram, you're going to see Scottie Barnes in more of a play finisher role. Not to say he's not going to average 5, 6, even 7 assists a game because he's a very good passer. The Raptors system is kind of just like cheat code for finding assists. Like they just rack him up across the board. And he is going to have opportunities with the ball in his hands. I think he's going to be more of a post hub at times this season. He really crafted his mid-range game last year, his sort of back down turnaround stuff. That's a real thing I think they'll lean on at times this season too, as sort of an inside out creative force. but he's going to be someone who can attack a defense that's already been compromised by Brandon Ingram, by an Immanuel Quickley, by the rim pressure they should be able to get just with, the way they play as a team. This is a high rim pressure team. They've not been a very good finishing team at the rim. They finished 29th in rim percentage last year, despite being second in rim frequency. But I think the way they can suck in defenses and then have Scottie Barnes attack a closeout, even if it's not a full-on closeout where you're scared of him actually shooting, he's someone who can chew that space up if you're not going to fully close out on him in a way that very few can. And I think that is going to be something that you kind of sort of see the shift in Scottie Barnes' game away from being this sort of, theoretical point forward type to more of like a slashing wing type who just is able to finish plays more often than he has to create them. There will be spots where he's asked to create as well. I think they have a better shooting environment around him. I think they have front court pairings, beyond Jakob Poeltl and Sandro Mamukelashvili. And of course, you've got, Colin Murray-Boyles as well, where I think they'll be able to kind of find environments with more space where he's able to work. I think he's going to play as a small ball five quite a bit as well, backing up Jakob Poeltl with plenty of shooting around him. He's just going to be used in a sort of jack of all trades kind of way, which I think is exactly how to use Scottie Barnes. He was very much kind of funneled down this creation silo last season, and it just wasn't good for his game. He's had too many high flashes of the things he's capable of offensively in previous seasons, particularly his rookie year and his third year, for me to think he's just what we saw last year. And then you factor in that last year, he made a pretty substantial leap as a defensive impact player. And when he was on the floor, the Raptors were just a good defense. He was that impactful for a team that has a lot of very negative defenders. He was there cleaning up messes all over the place. I think he's going to be in the all defense conversation this year with the team being serious. And when you combine that sort of, again, jack of all trades, master of none, wing stuff on offense with the incredible defense he brings to the table, I think you'll find yourself buying up Scottie Barnes stock, playing on a team that is a little bit more built to accentuate his strengths and cover for his weaknesses.
That makes a lot more sense to me relative to how he was used last year. And
he's not a point guard. For 1,000 times, I've screamed it from the rooftops. He's not a point guard. You got to retire that notion, that fantasy.
Not exactly similar players, but like in a world where he could be used a little bit more like how Atlanta uses like Jalen Johnson. I think that would be awesome for him. You mentioned Quickley a bunch of times. To me, he's the skeleton key for the Raptors starting lineup. Obviously, someone near and dear to Knicks fans' heart. Maybe my single, which is crazy in a world where Jalen Brunson exists, but maybe my single favorite Knicks since I've started doing this podcast. I just love the guy. I love his game. I said it before, but I was heartbroken that he could only play 33 games last year. Where are we at in his development? Even in again, it was just so sporadic last year, and he was playing through injury. He only played 28 minutes a game. So I don't know if he showed flashes last year. There's still very real questions. Again, he wasn't in an ideal environment, but it's about his efficiency. In Toronto, hasn't shot better than 42% from the field. A lot of that is because a good chunk, over 50% of his shots, come from three-point range, where he does shoot very well. I think he almost has to lean into that even more. Maybe shoot something like close to double-digit threes per game. You can tell me if that's nuts. He's shown incredible flashes as a playmaker, just 2-game sequences, right, where he piles up 26, 27 assists. It's so key for him just as an off-ball spacer and, to your point, as an on-ball creator that he excels, I think, for this offense to click. What are your expectations for him this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really big year for Quickley, right? This year might make or break whether or not that deal is a disaster or not. And I'm a Quickley believer. I have been since the Raptors traded for him, since before they traded for him. He was a guy I was like, they should go get that guy because you know what this team badly needs is elite three-point shooting. And whatever you say about Immanuel Quickley, he is one of the most elite high-volume shooters in all of basketball. The numbers back it up. The difficulty of his shots backs it up. He's just that good. And we saw last year when he played, the team just made a lot more sense. And there's a big reason why they started 9-31 is because Quickley wasn't playing in any of those games, and they had Davion Mitchell running the offense into the ground. He provides just competent guard play, even if he's not a top 15 guard or whatever you want to classify him as, what he should be, making $32.5 million a year. He's a very important player for this team. And I think the sort of combination of his on and off ball work is really going to get to sing on this team, right? You have Brandon Ingram is going to be able to carry the offense quite a bit. Scottie's going to have his moments. RJ is going to run with the bench sometimes. But I think having Quickley able to kind of run standard high pick and roll with Jakob Poeltl at times, and then also kind of go to the off-ball jitterbug stuff that's made him so effective away from the ball, working off of the advantages created by Ingram and Barnes and others, I think he's just going to be someone who you always have to account for. and who's going to help this offense work a whole lot more functionally than it did last season. He's to me, the single biggest reason why the Raptors were the 25th best offense in the league last year was they missed Quickley for more than half the season. It's pretty simple. And yeah, he's got to improve at the rim. He's got to improve his interior scoring. The floater touch has to come back to where it was when he was with the Knicks. These are all big questions, and it's no sure thing that he's going to make good on that contract this year. But I think the environment for him, much like with Scottie, the context of the team is much better set up to allow him to reach what the team is hoping from him as well. And so I'm pretty bullish on Quickley and his ability to be like the third scorer this team badly needs, who can both run the offense and work off the ball and sort of create havoc with his gravity.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to pass you the proverbial mic, and I want to hear what you want to know about the New York Knicks. We'll get into that in just a sec.
Today's show is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel, the #1 sports book in North America. And the NFL season, of course, is here. And FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Ain't that wonderful? Of course, if you're not a football fan, I'm getting back into it, sort of, still deciding, am I a Bills fan? Am I a Lions fan? Am I a fan of both? Liberated fandom for the win. But maybe you're someone who is a fan of basketball. I would assume you are if you're listening to this podcast, and you want to throw some money down on a futures bet for a championship winner. Maybe you want to go throw some money on the Denver Nuggets or the Minnesota Timberwolves or one of the teams in the Western Conference that could vanquish the evil Oklahoma City Thunder. Maybe you think the New York Knicks can do it all coming out of the East with an easier path to the finals. If you have a hunch on a long-term futures bet, you can go do that with FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. That's pretty sweet to go and check out. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Go check them out.
All right, we're back, crossing it over. Locked On Knicks, Locked On Raptors. Sean Woodley, what are you curious about the New York Knicks?
I mean, so I'm curious about, first off, I want to talk about Mitchell Robinson potentially starting because I think that's really interesting. But I mostly just want to get the sort of tone and tenor of Knicks fans, because it feels like when they lost last year to the Pacers, it was like this kind of meltdown that I didn't really expect from the fan base of a team watching their team go to the conference finals for the first time and who the hell knows how long. And it just felt like this team has runway. This team is good. This team is talented. They have guys on contracts for a long time. And maybe, in this world where contracts are actually bad and having money to pay players is actually a bad thing because everyone cares about the cap so much. Gross. Sucks. I hate it. You could paint it as a bad thing, but I think it's it's clearly a good thing that they have all of these core players locked in for many years to give them many kicks at the can, as it were. And for me, I know everyone's saying the Cavs are the favorites in the Eastern Conference. I actually think the Knicks are my favorites to come out of the East this year. Are Knicks fans feeling good, or are they getting existential? It just seemed like the reaction, and I know they fired their coach and there was reasons for it and reasons maybe to question it, especially with who they brought in to replace him. But to me, it felt like the reaction did not match the unbridled success that was last year for the Knicks.
Yeah, it's a fair question. Maybe I'm a little separated from it because my reaction was more so frustration that I didn't feel like they were fully maximized last year. And you do take into account, right, that you can never, when you have a star of Jalen Brunson's caliber, you can't take any year for granted, right? And they had just exceptionally good health luck last year. As well as I do, OG Anunoby, healthiest season of his career, tied his rookie year for most games played, career high in minutes, incredible. You don't know if you're going to get that again over the life of his contract. Same with Karl-Anthony Towns. He had the healthiest season, despite battling through some nagging stuff. He had the last 5 years. So I think the frustration was coming from a feeling of Tom Thibodeau going in game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals. All right, maybe now's the time to try a new starting lineup after this group hasn't worked at all in 2025. And it's been a net negative despite being nominally top 2 or 3 most talented starting 5 in the entire NBA. And it didn't work because they failed to adjust to the fact that defenses were changing how they were guarding the Knicks and putting their bigs on Josh Hart, their wings on Karl-Anthony Towns. And just late in that series, it's how about we try Landry Shamet now? Oh, wait, that works really well. How about we try DeLon Wright? Oh, that works really well. It would have been great if we could have figured that out earlier in the season. So I think it was just that there was stuff left on the table. For me, that was mitigated a little bit by the fact that Indiana was just really good, right? And we got proof of that in the NBA Finals, right? Tyrese Halliburton doesn't go down. Who knows? Maybe we're talking about them as the defending champs. The other pain point was obviously just blowing a 17-point lead with under 3 minutes to go in game one. Obviously, like you just don't know if you're going to get that opportunity again against that team. Fortunately for the Knicks, unfortunately for basketball fans, because it just sucks. Like Tyrese Halliburton is out for the season. Jason Tatum is out for the season. The Knicks, again, are gifted like a unique window where, to your point, I respect Cleveland. And I think there's just no argument that the Knicks were in the same stratosphere in the regular season last year. As from a Knicks perspective, and I think Knicks fans feel this way, nobody fears Cleveland the way Boston was feared to some extent, where Boston just absolutely owned the Knicks at times over the last couple of years. And there wasn't really a lot of hope going to that series. And the Knicks pulled it off. And that's one reason why you go into the season with renewed optimism. Like if we could beat them, we could beat anyone, because nobody, myself included, gave the Knicks like just a chance in that series. And the Knicks just beat Cleveland in the playoffs 3 years ago. So I think your thoughts on it are completely reasonable. I've gone kind of back and forth. I have a feeling Cleveland will be the better regular season team, even with their injuries. I think there's just a little less to figure out. In the playoffs, I think that is absolutely a toss-up of the series. And even though Cleveland might have just like a slightly more coherent team and identity right now, I might favor the Knicks just based on the grit they've shown that I don't know we've seen from Cleveland yet outside of Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, I mean, totally makes sense. I agree that they maybe weren't optimized last year. You know, there's all the stuff about, like they never brought along their young guys off the bench. And that was, oh God, they're throwing out Landry Shamet and DeLon Wright in playoff games. Oh, this is an insane decision considering they haven't played all year. And I totally get all of that. Like, I think you should use the regular season, especially when you're a good team that's racking up wins, to sort of flesh out the back part of your roster so you are ready when you need a random ninth guy to save you in a playoff game. I don't think they did that very well. I'm curious what you feel about the offseason additions for this team, because I'm kind of a mixed bag on Jordan Clarkson, Gershon Yabusele. Those are kind of the two big ones. I don't think Jordan Clarkson's a particularly effective player anymore. Maybe he's better than Cam Payne was. I don't know. I do think Yabusele is a really nice addition. Like, do you feel like they have the roster depth, baking in, maybe you get something from Dadier, maybe you get something from Tyler Kolek this year in year two. Do you think they have the depth to kind of overcome what was that big obstacle for them last year, which was just like, we have 6 guys we trusted, nobody else?
Yeah, I think they do. I'm really confident. I think they're 5 through 10 now, maybe 11, with seeming that they still have to make a trade to make it work, but that Brogdon and Shamet are going to be on this roster. I'd probably put up there with just about anyone other than Oklahoma City and the Clippers and the Wolves. Like maybe I'm forgetting one team in there, but like you look at just like here, like let's just say they start Mitchell Robinson, like baseline, your 6th and 7th guys aren't those two. They're Josh Hart, who would be pretty much immediately, again, maybe I'm forgetting someone here, but for my money, the best bench player in the NBA or at worst,
right up there.
Top 3 to top 4. Deuce, I think, is as good of a 7th man as there is in the NBA. And the Knicks are, I personally think he should start. And the Knicks are just dramatically better. Very similar to Immanuel Quickley back in the day. Every time he's on the floor, and his shooting and his 3-point rate and his point of attack defense and screen navigation are all just incredibly important to making this team function. In a world where he's starting, you have Mitchell Robinson off the bench, who showed like he's like on a permanent impact basis, probably like a top 60 player in basketball, a guy with clear limitations, but whose strengths are as strong, again, as like any center in the NBA in terms of offensive rebounding and rim protection. So just those 3, like 2 of those 3 as a baseline as your bench, I just think is an incredibly strong starting point. Clarkson, I think I'd push back on a little bit defensively. Like it's not going to be very good at this point in his career. He's certainly not in his prime as a scorer. There's a world where he just completely falls off a cliff this year. But the Knicks just really lacked, to your point on Toronto, for advantage creation last year. And that's something he still brings to the table. He brings off the dribble shooting. He brings live dribble passing, all at fairly high levels to very high levels for a bench guard. I think that's all helpful. Gershon's ability to shoot above the break threes, where he's elite as a threat in transition. Defensively, I think his weaknesses will be mitigated pretty much exclusively playing power forward and not playing a whole lot of backup center unless there's a surprise there or the Knicks make a move. And then Brogdon and Shamet, if they're your 10th and 11th guys, you're in a really good place. So I'm actually, it's on Mike Brown to deploy them correctly, and we'll see if this team makes a consolidation trade, because Sean, this might surprise you. It's hard for me to accept in a Tom Thibodeau pilled world that the Knicks are actually going to play 10 guys. Like I might need years of therapy before I'm ready to like process that. But If they do go 10, like they actually have the depth for it. So I think the bench, at least like last year before they made the cat trade, it looked incredible. And 2023, it was really, really good. But it's about as good as they've ever had to start a season.
You mentioned you think Deuce McBride should start. I am of the mind that, it's pretty clear there's proof of concept that Towns plus a rim protecting center is a damn good front court that can take you places. And I wonder, like, to me, that feels like the move. Like you move Hart to the bench, you have Bridges, OG, Towns as your 2, 3, 4, and then you round it out with obviously Robinson helping with the defensive stuff, the rim protection, the rebounding, the size. Like it's just like a gigantic team if you have him in there. To me, that feels like the move. But I guess the concern there is Mitchell Robinson not typically been a beacon of health throughout his career. Are the Knicks like too reliant upon Mitchell Robinson being like a keystone player for them in order to really have like serious ambitions of like going all the way and winning 4 rounds in the playoffs and getting a championship in the door?
Probably, yeah, but they don't have to be. Like, again, I think in a world where you start Deuce, I would not play Mitch over 20 minutes a game. I would never play him back-to-backs. I would have him pretty much on the like Kawhi Leonard early season plan, but just for the entire year. And it's like to that point, like we just heard at Knicks Media Day, Josh Hart has a finger injury. And if you see it, it looks totally gnarly. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to try to play through it. And then if it acts up, like maybe we'll do something, but I'm going to try to play with a splint. And in my mind, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I think the only thing that matters for this team is that you get to April healthy. And at least with Hart right now, it doesn't seem who knows? I don't have his medicals. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea. But to me, like, I would just have him get surgery and get it fixed. And like, that's kind of my same premise with Mitchell Robinson. Like wrap him in everything you can to make sure he stays safe. Leave him at home on road trips, like whatever you need to do to get that guy to April healthy. Because we saw it last year. Like he did get through like a bulk of the postseason, like fully healthy, like didn't really have any nicks and bruises. But I think that was because the Knicks were incredibly cautious in terms of how they ramped it up. His cardio was as good as it's ever been in his career. There was maybe a little bit less of the acrobatics that he had early in his career. Like, I think there is a way to do it where you can rely on him. It is a risk, but like there's, unless you're the Thunder and you just have the luxury of infinite depth, like there's risk baked into like almost every team. And if that is kind of your biggest pressure point, like, will he actually be healthy? Like, I feel pretty good about where the Knicks are. And again, like if I were Mike Brown, I'm structuring this team around the fact that you traded for like the best shooting 5, with apologies to Nikola Jokic, or alongside Nikola Jokic and Karl Anthony Towns in like maybe NBA history. He calls himself that. I don't know. He's in that conversation. Like, I think that is what you need to build your team around, because with Brunson and Cat as your 2 best guys, even with Mitch out there are always going to be limitations on the defensive end of the floor. If you do go double big, it's on Mike Brown to be a little bit more creative in how you get Cat involved. Because again, they didn't really try in the regular season. That wasn't only on Tibbs. That was because of the injuries. They had no idea. And Cat was an afterthought. And he was just like a rich man's Anthony Tolliver out there when Mitchell Robinson was starting, which is not what you want your $50 million all NBA big to be.
Not Anthony Tolliver is not a name you want to be invoking. That is for sure. My line of questioning is done, Gavin. I think the Knicks are going to be really good. Should we talk about how these teams stack up with one another in the Eastern Conference in a sec?
Yeah, let's do it. All right, we are back talking Knicks, talking Raptors. Sean, what are reasonable expectations for Toronto? Because I see, like we just discussed it a little bit, but I see a clear-cut top 3 where like the Knicks and Cavs are in their own tier. I think I would probably put, even though there isn't totally proof of concept there, Orlando in their own tier, just because I think they're clearly the 3rd most talented team left. And then Detroit is fascinating. I wonder if Jaden Ivey like hurts more than he helps. Like, I'm curious, because that team took off like the second he got hurt. They became one of the best teams in basketball. So I'm fascinated to see how that reintegration goes. I think Atlanta is really good. Again, you're really reliant on KP staying healthy. So that's interesting, but their wing depth, I'm a relative believer in Trae Young. Milwaukee just has a very high floor with Giannis plus shooting plus defense. That is a formula for 50 games. Is there a world where Toronto sneaks into that tier and potentially jumps one of those teams? I would have them maybe just on the outside looking in of that 3rd tier.
I think there's like, that's the ceiling of this team for sure. Like, I don't think I'd be totally shocked if we look up at the end of the year and in a clustered conference where 4 through 10 is separated by like 5 games, if the Raptors are sitting there in the 4 seed at the end of the season. Like, I don't think it's likely. I wouldn't put my money on it, but I don't think it's off the table. I think this team has too many good players to be bad the way they have in recent years, and I think they're really incentivized to try. I mean, Masai Ujiri got fired in the summer. ownership has very clearly like kind of taken control of the team in form of Ed Rogers and Keith Pelly and all of the big wigs up top. And they seem to be really wanting a return to the playoffs. And I don't think they're going to green light a tank season if things don't start off super well. Like, I think they're going to want to try to push for playoff home gate revenue. I think that's like genuinely an inspiring factor here for the team. And hey, like, maybe that's not the greatest thing in the world where you're taking your cues from ownership. I'm sure Knicks fans know all about that. It's not the most wonderful place to be, but as someone who's like thirsting for just any kind of competitive basketball after, over the last 5 years, only one of them being entertaining or good or fun in Raptors world, like, I'm all for winning 45, 46 games this year, which I think is very much on the table. I think the downside, like, I don't see them falling out of the play. And again, there's just too much talent. And I think the bottom of the Eastern Conference is like pretty clear cut to me. The Nets are going to be maybe one of the worst teams we've ever seen. They're going to be a disaster. The Wizards are the Wizards. I still do not think the Hornets are going to do much of anything. I think the Bulls are going to, kind of prove that March was exactly what it was, March basketball for them last year, and they're not particularly good or inspiring. And I think the Celtics are just going to kind of say, you know what, I know, Jason Tatum's going to come back in March. I'll believe it when I see it. I think they're probably just going to go and maybe eat their vegetables and win 24 games this year to add a high pick to Jason Tatum when he comes back next year. That would be how I would do it if I were the Celtics. Maybe Joe Mazzulla is not wired to, accept losing, but you might just have to accept losing when Luka Garza and Chris Boucher are your two best big men. Just saying. And so I think that top 10 is pretty clear cut. If the Raptors are 9th or 10th, I do think that would be a bit of a disappointment. I think they'd like to at least host a play-in game at the very least, be in the 7th or 8th spot and, have a better chance of making it into the playoffs proper. 9th or 10th, you're looking at like kind of a disappointing output, I think, for the team, considering the talent level across the board and the amount of investment in the team. Like, this is an expensive team. They are being paid as though they should be winning basketball games. And so I think there's some really tough questions to answer if they come out of this year and they're like 40-42 in the 9th seed. Like, that could be pretty rough stuff for like what the next steps are. If they're in the middle, mid 40s, they win 45, 46, they're flirting with top 6 until late in the season at the very least, if not making it into the top 6. I think you count that as, hey, positive step forward. Along with that, some guys probably improve their trade value, improve their rep around the league. And the next steps become more clear. Maybe you identified the pieces that aren't going to be around long-term, all of that. Like, I think it could be productive, even if they're not like, title contenders or anything like that this year. So yeah, I think the expectation is fight for top 6. I think it's very feasible. I'm not sold the Pistons are just going to be able to replace the Klay Thompson level season that Malik Beasley had last year. I'm not sold that the Bucks are going to be able to withstand any kind of injury to Giannis for more than like a week or two and not fall down the standings. I'm not sold on the Hawks even. Like, I know Knicks fans have a special kind of PTSD related to Trae Young. I don't have that. I've only ever seen Trae Young lose all of the time when he plays against my team. And so I'm not terribly scared of the Hawks until it's proven that actually Trae Young can affect, serious winning in a season that is not the fake post-COVID year where they made it to the conference finals. The actual fake season, by the way. The bubble was real. 2021 or 2020.
By the way, Sean, you're immediately, for all Knicks fans listening, you are their favorite locked on host now, maybe outside of me, maybe including me, because that was uncalled for, came out of nowhere. Yep. And you just went at Trae Young. So
I love to do it. It's great. Yeah, I know my audience. I'm pandering, but it's fine. You're
gonna have 1,000 new subscribers tomorrow. This is gonna be great for you.
Hey, that would be great. I would love that. Please subscribe to Locked On Raptors. I think top 6 is right there. It was a long-winded answer. I think they can make it there. And I wouldn't be shocked if we saw like a 2-7 first-round matchup between the Knicks and the Raptors, even a 3-6 if the Magic are really good. Like, this is not off the table as like a playoff matchup we could totally see in the Eastern Conference this year. I don't know. Where do you see the Raptors stacking up? And do you think the Knicks are just going to be very clearly one of those top 2 seeds?
Yeah, I think I'd be surprised if they fell below 3. To your point, like just statistically, obviously knocking on every piece of wood in my apartment. They should have more injuries this year. I think they have better depth to withstand it. Basically, everyone, like the 3 most irreplaceable guys, weirdly enough, even though Cat is clearly their second best player, are probably Brunson, OG, and Mikal in that order, just because they have they have 3 wings on this team, right? To your point.
Sure.
Hakeem Dadier, maybe it kind of seems like they're going to trade him, which I think is crazy, but to create a roster spot, presumably for Landry Shamet, which I I disagree with, but I digress. But they have insulation. Like anyone other than Jalen Brunson, like they can afford for them to miss as long as it's like sub 30 games, and I still think be the 2 seed. If Jalen Brunson gets hurt, obviously they're in a world of trouble, and there's no replacing what he does in this team. But that is this rule of thumb with like every top 10 to 12 best player in the NBA. So
yeah, star player gets hurt, you're screwed. That's just kind of the way it is, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I would be very surprised if they're not a top 3 seed. I don't know. I don't like have a ton of confidence they're going to make a run at the 1 seed again. I wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland, despite the fact that Garland's out for the beginning of the year, Strus is out for a couple months, if they just like ran away with it, similar to the way the Celtics did 2 years ago, similar to the way Cleveland did last year. But I think the Knicks will be a 2 or 3 seed. But just before we head out, I wanted to ask what you make of this matchup specifically. The Knicks have won the last 8, according to my napkin math, by an average of 17 points per game. Toronto, to your point, should be much more competitive this year. I think the way the teams match up is interesting. Like I really like the idea that like all pending the Knicks starting Mitchell Robinson, all 5 starters on both teams are scoring threats. I think that's interesting. That's kind of fun. I do think there might be like there are pressure points on both sides. Like the Knicks will certainly try to go at RJ Barrett at times, and Toronto will certainly try to go at Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. How do you think the Raptors match up last year? Because they certainly played the Knicks much more competitively last season than they did 2 years ago, where all those games were blowouts.
Yeah, I mean, last year, I just kind of throw out most of the season because, like, we haven't actually seen the team as it's going to be together this year play together. And the last 2 seasons, the team has very outwardly said, like, yeah, we're not really trying to win games here. And so a lot of grains of salt when you try to look at results from the last couple of years. I think in theory, it's not a terrible matchup for the Raptors. It's not like, the Knicks are like a team that has a lot of shooting everywhere. That's always a challenge, but I think the Raptors are pretty good at covering ground. And I think when it comes to that sort of Brunson and Towns pick and roll of it all, like I think they have the means to defend it reasonably well on one end. Like I think Quickley's gotten much better with his screen navigation. I think they have a few other guys, Jacoby Walter, Jamal Shed, they can go throw on a lead guard and, have some modicum of success, as great as Jalen Brunson is. And I think, the matchup of Towns versus Jakob Poeltl is interesting, right? Like it is very much a sort of clashing of styles. I think Poeltl typically struggles more sort of with like vertical threat bigs. Like I think Mitchell Robinson's kind of the type that just kind of overpowers him and is just better at his own game than him. I think a guy like Towns is someone Poeltl on defense. Like he's got good feet. He can stretch out to the perimeter. He's not someone who's afraid to go dance in space if he has to. And I think offensively, he's someone that you can kind of just spam pick and roll and really test Karl Anthony Towns as a drop big. It's again, the Knicks are more talented. They're better. Like they're going to finish higher in the standings for a reason. Throw an OG onto Brandon Ingram while Scottie Barnes maybe gets to go work on Mikal Bridges. Like maybe that's a sore spot you can go and attack just strength wise, size wise. But yeah, I think, I haven't done a ton of thinking about the on-court machinations of really any matchup for the Raptors yet, because I don't know what the hell they're going to look like to begin with. But I do think, the Knicks pose an interesting matchup that's not like this sort of daunting, oh God, we can't possibly imagine winning this game type of matchup for the Raptors. I think it's going to be one where it's pretty competitive, and there's, a fun sort of mix of a clash of styles almost with how these two teams play that I think would be pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I wanted Immanuel Quickley 40-piece against the Knicks. Like he hasn't had a ton of opportunity to go.
You and me both, my man. Yeah,
I need that FU game. Hopefully close Knicks win when that happens. But hey, he's Sean Woodley. Check him out over at Locked On Raptors. For Toronto fans listening, if you want to learn a little bit more about the New York Knicks, be sure to subscribe wherever you can find podcasts. It's Locked On Knicks. Until next time, Locked On Knicks, Locked On Raptors. We'll talk to you very soon.